Go ahead, Dr. Song.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Well, I'd like to first welcome everybody, and this is our third and also last session on the introduction to the ARO committee. My name is Kathy Sung from the NIDCD at the National Institutes of Health, and I'm also the chair of the ARO Education Committee. So most of you probably received the volunteers needed email that looks like what you see in this PowerPoint slide. And for those who are looking to be more involved with ARO and considering volunteering for ARO committees might not know their full roles, responsibilities, or how much commitment it is. And so you may not know which committee to volunteer for. So ARO has council and 11 committees that all have unique roles and how they contribute to the ARO midwinter meeting and year-round initiatives. And so March 8th, you've heard from the chair of the, let's see if I can go to the next slide. So on March 8th, you've heard from the chairs of ARO committees that include Council, Diversity and Minority Affairs, Long Range Planning, Program and Membership Committee. And March 15th, you've also heard from the Student, Postdoc, Medical Residents, and Fellows ARO group, or in short, SPARO. SPARO also organizes and hosts several workshops at the ARO midwinter meeting, such as mentoring sessions, science communication workshops, and young investigator luncheons, and also has year-round initiatives outside the midwinter meeting, including ARO or JARO research news. And so in case you've missed these information sessions, you can also catch up with them on the ARO's YouTube channel. And so I'm gonna actually pop their link in the chat. So in case anybody wants to catch up with them, the link is there. And so today, I'm excited to introduce you to our 6 ARO committees. And so here you can, we've invited chairs from the Travel Award, Accessibility and Accommodations, Awards Committee, External Relations, Finance, and Education Committee, which is us. And so with that, I'm excited to introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Velez Ortega from University of Kentucky, and also the chair of the Travel Awards Committee. So welcome.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Sun. So I have been a member of the Travel Awards Committee for about 3 years. So mainly the pandemic part in this last in-person meeting. And now I've started as a chair as of a month ago. And so I'm going to describe the main tasks that members of the committee will have to go through. We are in charge of reviewing all the applications for the Travel Awards and then setting up those that will receive the awards in each meeting. So most of the committee will have a quiet time between March and July. Then in August, when the call for applications is about to go out, we just have to proofread the call, make any changes, excuse me. And then it gets really busy after the applications are in. So October, November, each application gets reviewed by at least 3 members. So in the past years, we've had anything from 40 to 60 applications to review. We get a few weeks to review those. A few of the applications will need a second round of review if the initial reviewers were not in agreement, or for the top awards, if there's a time break that is needed, then we'll get a second round of applications, but it shouldn't be more than 3 to 5 applications that the members will need to review. And then we're also in charge of finding the speaker for the award luncheon that will happen at the meeting and coordinating that part. So for most members of the committee, most of the year it's really quiet and it just gets really busy right after the applications come in. Also, my committee right now has about 11 members, so it will be good to have 3 to 5 additional members to help with the load, as I expect maybe an increase in applications next year now that we're back in person.
Okay, great, thank you. So I guess in terms of, so I guess for the information for newly joined people, how do you, could you kind of describe a little bit in terms of how much hour that they're going to be committing to the Travel Awards, I guess, responsibilities that you all have?
Yeah, I've asked several members of the committee how much time they spend, and I think the majority of us will need to either spend a lot of evenings, so 2 hours per day for 2 weeks, or put it on 2 full days of reviewers, so a couple weekends maybe, with a lot of work right after the applications come in. And then it gets quiet the rest of the year.
And then I think there's a travel awards liaison position with the committee. Could you also kind of briefly describe what their role is?
Travel award liaison from
Sparrow. So like a student representation of the committee.
I don't know if we had one. Do we? I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not aware that we have a Sparrow representative in the committee since we're selecting travel awards for the trainees. I don't think that they will get to.
Yes,
Okay.
Dr.
Look at
Velez, I don't believe you do.
Yeah, we don't think we do.
Mm-mm.
Would you mind if I kind of fill that in? Because I used to be a travel awards Sparrow liaison before. And so I just kind of wanted to slightly fill in and just mention that if anybody is interested in the travel, I guess the Sparrow liaison with the travel award, we weren't able to be involved in the process of evaluating the travel awards application, but we were just able to sit in the meetings and kind of write notes down and kind of communicate with the Sparrow population as well, kind of like going back and forth, connecting between Sparrow and ARO.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. So, okay, that sounds great. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for Dr. Velez? Right. Okay. All right, that sounds good. So, okay. So next we have Dr. Julie Huck from Kent State University, representing the Accessibility and Accommodations Committee.
So yes, I'm Julia Hike, and I'm the new chair of the Accessibility and Accommodations Committee. We are a very new committee. We came into being as a work group prior to the first virtual meeting during COVID, and have been raised to a full committee since that time. Basically, what we do is we try to evaluate the accessibility of the midwinter meeting and ARO in general, and help guide planning of any needed accommodations for midwinter meeting attendees. So we look at the meeting space, we look at access to various things for hearing, vision, physical disability or ability, information processing, those sorts of things, as well as anything else that comes up. We usually meet starting about maybe August prior to the midwinter meeting, and then have several meetings, often monthly, for about an hour, to kind of talk about what we need to communicate, what guidelines we need to have about how to make presentations more accessible, or any policies. And then we communicate that back to the executive office on how to help, as well as to council if there's any changes we would like to suggest in terms of our requirements to help make the meeting more accessible for all. So because we're so new, every person on the Accessibility and Accommodations Committee has served for 3 years, which is normally how long a term is on a committee here. So there are, of course, some people who are interested in continuing, but if people are interested in kind of this work and the work that we're doing, we would welcome some new participants in the process. So reach out and let us know. As I said, everyone has completed a full 3-year term at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Ike. So a couple of questions. the type of accessibilities and accommodations, do you include like captioning? And if somebody has any issues with, say, for example, if they're disabled and they have like problems walking, are those kind of the accommodations that you're referring to?
Yeah, so the ones that are most visible, are the fact that we actually had at the last meeting 2 types of captioning. We had both human captioning and AI captioning, because different people with different amounts of hearing loss prefer one or the other. And so we need to provide both so that people who have their preferred method of communication. But we do also consider things like, you might have seen last year, we had a lot of guidelines on about how to make your presentation visually friendly, including colorblind friendly palettes, including minimum font sizes recommended for posters and presentations, things like that. And then, of course, we do look at whether the space is ADA accessible from a physical standpoint. So providing, one of the things that's changed over the last couple of years is providing more optional seating so that it's easier to find a chair in the poster hall if you need one. And as well as making sure there's enough space so that people can navigate if they have mobility issues. So we obviously discuss as much as we can, however we can help any group that it has different, accessibility needs, and to make the meeting itself as well as the organization as universally accessible to as many people as many different differing abilities as possible.
Okay. And in terms of kind of individual commitment to this committee, how much would you say that there is, like, I guess, in terms of hours, and what would be like an individual level responsibility?
I would say there's usually maybe 4 meetings a year, each about an hour to an hour and a half long. And then sometimes we will ask people to do a little research in between meetings. One of the things that we try not to do is be too far guided by only our own experience, because that excludes people, right? So sometimes we do have to do a little bit of legwork and do a little bit of research as to, if we, what are colorblind friendly palettes, right? What are good recommendations for font size? And we have people who have been leaders in advocacy across the disability community who are part of the committee who can help with that, but sometimes we don't know when we have to look things up.
Okay, that sounds great. Is there any questions from the audience? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Hike. We then have the awards committee. Dr. Kint from NIDCD, NIH joins us today. So thank you for joining today.
No problem. Thanks. So I've been on the awards committee during the pandemic, and then I recently became the co-chair along with Nace Golding. And if you have any questions after this meeting and you think of them later, feel free to email me and ask me any additional questions as well. So overall, the goal of the awards committee is to really honor ARO members who have made significant contributions to the field of otolaryngology, which is quite a cool goal, and it's cool to be a part of that too. So as you may or may not know, ARO has 4 more main achievement awards. One is the Geraldine Fox Young Investigator Award, what that recognizes accomplishments or promise in research in young investigators early in their career. And then we have 2 maybe sort of more mid-level awards, or mid-career awards, I should say, that are more new. The Pioneer Award in Basic Science, which recognizes a body of work representing a significant advance in hearing or vestibular related research. And then we also have an Innovator Award in Clinical Science, which recognizes a significant advance relevant to the clinical practice in hearing or vestibular disorders. And then the last award that we recognize is the Award of Merit, which many of you are probably more familiar with, which recognizes a substantial scientific achievement or contribution to the field of otolaryngology. And in general, we have about 15 members on the committee, and like all the ARO committees, we seek to have a committee that's inclusive of all identities and abilities. And also scientifically, we try to get a diverse group of scientists that really span the breadth of the ARO community. So we look to have both like clinicians and basic researchers, people who study human patients or do research in a variety of models, who study like both auditory or vestibular research, or research within the periphery, middle ear, or in the CNS, so that we can really evaluate all the applications that we get. So it's a really good way if you're interested in the committee, and you want to promote people within your field of expertise. It's really great because during our meetings, you can like tell us why research within your particular expertise is so important and why someone is worthy of the award. So in general, we ask the committee members to be on the committee for 3 years. And each year there's sort of three main things that you have to do. So one thing that we ask is that the committee members do their best to promote people within their field or within their institution to nominate people for the award. So to sort of promote the awards. And then each year we have 2 voting periods. So we're coming up on one of them now. So in May, we're going to vote for the award of merit. And usually this involves reviewing about 10 to 15 applications. And I guess the time that it takes to do that is just the time that it would take you to do that, which is they're pretty large applications. And then you go into a portal and you rank the candidates. And then usually some of the top candidates emerge from this voting period. And then we usually meet for at least an hour to discuss the top candidates. And so everyone can have a say, and then we'll re-vote to come up with our final candidate that we're going to put forward to the ARO president. And an additional thing that you may do, if one of the top candidates is part of your field of expertise, you may be asked to speak in more detail for that particular candidate, if that makes sense. And then in the fall, in October, we look at the other 3 awards. And again, you might have up to 15 to 25 applications to review for all in total for these 3 awards. And then if there are just top candidates that we agree on, we may not need to meet, but oftentimes we do meet again to discuss and decide among the top candidates. So another hour meeting. And I think that's about it.
All right, great. Thank you, Dr. Kent. I just have one question, which is the committee actually looking for new committee members to join?
I think so. I tried to get, no one told me who's on my committee. I've been trying to figure that out, but I think we are always looking for new members.
Okay, thank you so much.
No
okay,
problem.
that sounds great. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Kent? Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so we next have the External Relations Committee. The chair of this committee is Dr. Dylan Chan from University of California in San Francisco, and Dr. Rebecca Lewis from University of California.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So Dylan, feel free to jump in wherever you like here. So we're co-chairs of the External Relations Committee, and generally our goal is to strengthen our ties to the public. So as we know, researchers are very good at what they do, but they can definitely be focused on their work. And in order to make sure that our work stays relevant to people in the community, we want to make sure that we have a really great bond with public members. And so the External Relations Committee is really focused on kind of creating and strengthening that bond. So we have a few different programs that we are currently working on to do that. But what this generally involves is just, kind of programs to connect to the public. So for example, this last year, we've been working on developing a speakers bureau, which is something that's been actually created for a few years now, but it hasn't been well utilized yet. It is a program where ARO members can actually volunteer their expertise, their time, and be connected to an institution who that actually wants to feature that individual and have them connect to people at their institution. So for example, you could imagine a speaker, an ARO member giving a talk about their research to a museum or to a clinical setting, various environments where you have people who are really hungry for that type of information, but they don't know who to reach out to and kind of how to find these people. So that is one thing that's currently in development. I think people who have been in ARO for a while have also seen our kind of public events. So at ARO, we'll often have a public event that is tied to the midwinter meeting. We did not do that last year, but that is actually to make room for a new program that we are currently kind of hashing out some of the details for. And maybe I will pass the baton to Dylan just to give like a brief overview of that program.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Becky. Historically, the External Relations Committee has focused on sort of one-off events during the ARO conference. If people remember in the past, we've had joint presentations with local symphonies or local museums, things like that, that have really been centered on the midwinter meeting. Over the last couple of years, we've pivoted to having ideas of having more disseminated engagement of ARO members with their local communities. And so we are working on developing a program to allow ARO members to apply for mini grants to support development of their whatever kind of partnership they can develop with a local community organization. So some examples of this would be partnering with the museum to put on a hearing science day, or to go into schools and teach about hearing. So our what is cool about the committee is that we meet about monthly. We have divided into working groups, and those monthly meetings turn into essentially working meetings where we brainstorm ideas and really put them into action. So it's it's a very well engaged and full of people who are interested in communicating their science and developing mechanisms to enable ARO members to better communicate their science with the people around them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So does that mean that the work that's done in the External Relations Committee is more related to the midwinter meeting, or could this be a year-round initiative?
Yeah, it's really both. So we do look into potential events to put on during the midwinter meeting. That had been something we had really done every year, and then COVID hit, and we're sort of emerging out of the virtual meeting abyss. And so I anticipate in the future we will develop these events at the midwinter meeting again. But we've also recognized the importance of ongoing year-round engagement with the community through these things like the Speakers Bureau, through this mini grant mechanism, as well as one thing we didn't really talk about was social media and how to enable ARO members to disseminate their work through social media as well.
Great. So I guess my other question is, you've touched base on the mini grant. Does that, and that probably involves some reviewing applications. And so I guess like with all of the initiatives that are ongoing, what kind of like time commitment do you foresee some new committee members that are joining the committee?
Go ahead, Becky.
I feel like it can be very open. I would say, though, that this is a very involved committee. With all the different initiatives, you can imagine that a lot of folks, we need to kind of meet regularly and then also follow up on some of our kind of ongoing projects in between those meetings. That said, none of this is kind of putting out fires or anything. So, we can certainly be very flexible with schedules. And yeah, I mean, with the mini grants kind of kickoff in our future, I imagine that time commitment could go up a little bit, but it also depends on how much interest we get from the ARO community. So that's kind of just a pilot program at this point. So yeah, so I would say don't be afraid of the time commitment. It's a great community, and yeah, and it's really fun. So also would encourage Sparrow members to join because I think that they bring a lot of kind of diversity of thought to the group, given their position as students and postdocs. So special plug for them because they are essentially full members of the committee. So I definitely appreciate all of their contributions.
Yeah, over the past year, we did have a monthly meeting schedule where we met for 1 hour each month. But we primarily did our work during that meeting, like the actual work for the committee. So generating the proposals, so we would break out into a few breakout groups during that 1 hour meeting and actually do the work during them. So there was not a whole lot of work to be done outside of those monthly 1 hour meetings.
Great. I have one last question. How do you, I guess, because this is an outreach, how do you kind of advertise this to the ARO committee, or sorry, to like the broader members of ARO for, like their kind of interest in wanting to be like not necessarily involved in the committee, but involved in the work that the committee does?
That's where we rely on. Currently, we're mostly focused on the email blasts that go out, but we also have some of this go out over social media. So, for example, we do have one feature that's so well run now that I will probably get the name of the feature wrong, but it's the feature, the member spotlight, I believe, where each week we have another ARO member that's featured on Twitter. And that I think generates some interest, and there's always kind of calls over Twitter for additional submissions. So yeah, I would say probably the email route as well as Twitter, and then of course good old fashioned chatting with people and just kind of connecting with those that Yeah.
Okay, great. I guess I have one last question, which is, are you looking for new committee members?
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
Okay.
So we had a few folks roll off this year. We don't have complete turnover of the committee, or nearly complete. We have definitely some folks that are continuing. But yeah, we are looking for new members. And if you're not ready for a full committee member, position at this time, and you're just kind of interested in helping out with our various programs, feel free to get in touch. Like we said, there are different ways to get involved. For example, the Speakers Bureau, and potentially, if you'd like to submit a mini grant, then that would be an option too. So, yeah, we're definitely looking for new folks, and would love to hear more ideas about how we could continue our connections with the public.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Chan, Dr. Lewis. I really appreciate all of the information that you provided. Does anybody have questions from the audience? Okay, all right. So we will then move on to the Finance Committee. Dr. Amanda Lauer from Johns Hopkins University is here as chair of the Finance Committee. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. I can keep this fairly short. So I think everybody sees finance and is like, oh no, I hate dealing with money, right? This is terrible. That's actually the reason I joined the Finance Committee, because I always find, budget review meetings to be kind of stressful when we have to do them in my department. And I wanted to desensitize a little bit, but also I wanted to learn a little more about, how the organization operates in general and why it operates that way. And really the best way to do that is to understand the money, income, and expenses. And so that's basically what we do. We review statements about the budget, the income and expenses once every quarter. Luckily, the management company Parthenon makes it really easy for us. They're just really easy to understand spreadsheets, and we don't have to prepare them. There are accountants doing this. So we just look it over and ask questions, and if anything looks weird, we bring it up, or if we have recommendations to make to council about changing how the money is distributed or managed or spent, we can bring that up with the treasurer who attends our meetings, and then she would take that to council for making decisions. So we don't decide how to spend the money, we just kind of review everything and make recommendations. Sometimes we have to draft policies. For instance, we just did an investment policy that ARO Council just adopted, just to provide some written guidance for the future for whoever's on the finance committee about how to handle the money that's in the bank. And then I would say in between our meetings, which last an hour, once a quarter, I don't know, maybe half an hour of time or less, depending how fast you are on reviewing the documents before the meetings, just to get familiar with them. So I mean, I'll be totally honest, this is a pretty easy committee. If you need something to build your CV for promotion, or you want to get a skill that might be useful for leadership, this is a good one. It doesn't take up too much time, but I think you learn a lot in the amount of time you spend. And certainly you can become more comfortable with money issues, I guess, which most of us as scientists don't really like, but we have to deal with more and more as budgets stay kind of flat, but we're expected to do more with money. This helps relieve some of the stress and anxiety about doing that sort of work. So I'm happy to answer more questions about what we do. I don't think you really want to know line by line the budget items, right? But if you do, let me know. Happy to go through those things.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Lauer. So my question is, in terms of like other committees, say, for example, have come up with some proposal for that year's ARO midwinter meeting, would they be submitting that application to the finance committee for approval?
So my understanding is those have to go through council, but council might ask us, is it okay if we spend money on this new initiative or something like that? And then we can review the budget and say, yeah, absolutely, or no, I don't think we can spend more on that. I think the ultimate decisions are really not in our hands. It's really something we make recommendation about to council.
I see. And are you looking for new committee members?
Yeah, we need more members. A bunch of people just rotated off this year. So this is my third year, and so it's my last year. And I think we have a couple more members, but we could definitely use a few more people, a few more eyes on the money.
Okay. All right, that sounds great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Lauer? Okay. All right, so thank you everybody who've just provided a small synopsis of what they do in their committee. So the last committee is us, which leaves the Educations Committee. So I'll just kind of briefly go through what we do. So the Educations Committee basically started out as what's called the Virtual Learning Task Force. And this Virtual Learning Task Force was formed in 2020 as kind of a joint initiative between ARO and Sparrow. And so this was for us to make sure that there was continued engagement with our membership over kind of this uncertain time of social isolation due to COVID-19 pandemic. And so over the course of the past 3 years, we've kind of brought a year-round initiative to our membership that basically includes the virtual seminar series and the virtual coffee hour. And right now, sessions like this is part of our virtual coffee hour. And so we've had pretty good success with these initiatives. And so in light of these initiatives that we've put together, we're basically going forward with the Virtual Learning Task Force being elevated to a full committee, and it's been renamed as Educations Committee. And so basically our committee provides a year-round delivery of curated content to our membership. And so we're not exactly involved too much in the actual midwinter meeting, but but the membership will pretty much hear from the education committee throughout the course of the year. And so just to kind of briefly touch on the two initiatives that we have, and we're currently, when we potentially have more committee members join, and yes, we are looking for new committee members, we do have plans to kind of expand out in some of the initiatives that we do. But as of now, we have the seminar series, which we have put seminar series of 3 topics so far. And so the seminar series that we've put together, we have basically a topic, and then we have a kind of a keynote speaker, followed by 2 young investigator to junior investigator that comes and gives a talk. And so as of now, we've put together the inner ear and auditory nerve function that was given by Dr. Brownell, William Brownell from Baylor College of Medicine, Dr. Jenny Stone from University of Washington in Seattle, and Dr. Anthony Peng from University of Colorado in Denver. We've put together the genetics seminar series that was presented by Dr. Tom Friedman from the NIDCD, Dr. Lisa Goodrich from Harvard Medical School, and Dr. Rana Hartsano from University of Maryland, who's been recently recruited to the NIDCD. And then we have an upcoming topic at the innate immunity in the auditory system, which is going to be carried out by Dr. Elizabeth Keithley and Dr. Tomoko Makishima from University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, and Dr. Karina Kramer, University of California, Irvine, and Dr. Teshbir Kaur from Creighton University. We're further putting together the vestibular systems and middle ear topics following these topics. So that's basically the seminar series that we have. And then we have the coffee hour. And so you'll probably be receiving some of the emails towards when we get closer to the midwinter meeting with the title of "Come with questions about the 2020 whatever midwinter meeting and get to ask questions directly to the ARO headquarters staff." And so this is basically when people join, if they have any questions about the meeting. We've had a lot of questions that come by when everything went virtual, especially last year when we were going to have an in-person meeting and then everything got shifted to virtual. So people had a lot of questions, and I think these sessions are really helpful for people who have like questions for the meeting, like how to put a poster online or something related to the meeting. And then we have to really help people for submitting their poster, their talk, abstracts, symposium abstracts. We've invited Dr. Brandon Cox to kind of give a brief introduction of how to write a personal statement. We've invited Dr. Matt Kelly as the chair of the program committee at the time to talk about the ARO abstract writing. And then we've also invited Dr. Jonathan Bird from the Travel Awards Committee at the time to kind of talk a little bit about the CVs and rationale statement that was required for the Travel Awards application. And then the introduction to ARO committee. This again is part of the coffee hour as well. So those two are the big initiatives that we have. And again, when and if we have more committee members that are joining, we plan to expand a little bit more in terms of the initiatives that we're trying to put together. So that is the Educations Committee. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. So that was our 6 committees. And again, we do have a total of 12 ARO committees. And so I just want to if nobody has any further questions, I just want to reiterate that all of us are here because we need volunteers for our committees, and I would hope that everybody or most of you from the call are interested in volunteering for these committees. So with that, I'd like to conclude this session, and thank you everybody thank you to the chairs of each committee for joining today. And I'd also like to thank Dawn and Rhiannon for really helping to put these sessions together. Okay, all right, thank you everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sung and all.
Thank you.